Hello and welcome back to the PublishU podcast, where we explore the real life stories of authors from around the world. Today we are talking to Leslie Newton, who has written a book called Revive Us Again. Leslie, great to see you. Welcome.
Great to see you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about my book. That's great. Thank you.
And where in the world are you today?
I'm in York, in England, where I live with my wife and daughter at the moment.
Very good. And what is it you do?
Well,
Are you retired? Are you a
oh
math
no,
lecturer or are you
no.
got a high power job?
Well, I work for the Methodist Church, so that's one of the denominations of the Christian Church in England, and it's around the world as well. And I've been a Methodist minister now for 25 years. Before that, I was an accountant.
An
And
accountant to a Methodist minister. That's a bit of a shift.
I know. Well, it is, isn't it? Yeah. I was never sure as a young person what I really wanted to do. I was quite musical as well. Wondered about that. Ended up drifting into accountancy, I think, is the truth. But all the time, I was still. I've been brought up with as part of the Methodist Church. My mum and dad were Methodists, so
Yeah.
it's part of the way in which I was just brought up. And I never left because my best friends were at the Methodist Church. So it was like my friendship place.
Yeah.
It was my happy place. And
Yeah.
so I've never left. And faith has come into all of that. And maybe we'll talk a bit about that. But faith obviously became more and more important. And gradually it just felt that there was this call, as I would describe it, to change track and become a Methodist minister.
Yeah. Amazing. And are you somebody who likes history, Leslie? Or
Well,
are you
I
captivated with the future? I know some of my friends, very future orientated, and I'm one of those. I'm a visionary. I'm always looking ahead. And I have other friends who are kind of fascinated by the past and learning from it. Where's your
well, it's
greatest passion?
interesting. I would say the answer to the question is I'm more interested in the future. But
Mm,
I think what I've learned as I've got older, that if you're really going to think really wisely about the future, you do well to have a look back, actually. And it's amazing how often, and we shouldn't be surprised by this, but it's amazing how often you can find the route to the future by looking at what has happened in the past, I think.
yeah.
And that's really important. Yeah.
Wow, fantastic. And so what's your job within the Methodist Church? What is it you
Well,
actually
I kind of have a curious job at the moment where I don't particularly look after our church, so I have a regional job. Um, in the Anglican Church, they have bishops. People will be aware of bishops. I'm not a bishop, but it's a bit like being a bishop. It's a regional role, and it's
Yeah,
got a really odd title of being a district chair, which sounds very inanimate
yeah,
and wooden, but that's my job title is a district chair. So I have a regional role over North
yeah.
Yorkshire, looking after a range of churches and ministers who look in more detail
Yeah.
over those churches. So
How
yeah,
how many churches within your bishopric?
yeah, about 200, about 200
Wow,
churches,
gosh.
covering
Um,
a lot of the east coast of Yorkshire and rural North Yorkshire and Hull and York and Harrogate.
yeah.
Yeah.
And how's the church doing in rural communities? We could talk about that all day, but what's your? Small is beautiful. I often find, but small can
Small
also.
can be beautiful. Small can be beautiful, and there's certainly, I think, there's great hope in small. So we shouldn't write off the small. Where small gets hard is when it's just become a bit calcified, and it's almost, just almost. It feels like things are entrapped rather than liberated. And we've got examples of both. I think we've got somewhere small is beautiful, and they're doing all sorts of wonderful adventures, and the smallness doesn't matter at all. But there's
Absolutely.
also the smallness where they just feel they've got too little resources,
Yeah,
and they feel a bit hemmed in and struggling. So we've got both going on, in
yeah,
truth.
yeah. And so, what's your vision? Coming back to vision again, what's your vision for Methodist churches, around the country and around the world?
Well, this is where the future and the history comes back, I think, you see, because when you look at how Methodists emerged out of the Church of England in the 18th century, where John Wesley, who was an Anglican vicar priest, he was really set on fire by God, and he preached outdoors and he formed all sorts of new communities, and that was the birthing of Methodism. And there's a real sense of movement about the Methodist people. That just remarkably, one man on his horse, John Wesley, going around the country, just sharing the fire of God in people's hearts, and they wanted to change the world. So it was a movement of transformation that
Yeah.
just sprung up around the country,
Yeah.
and it was very contextual. And so what was happening in one place would be right for there, and it would happen in a different color and shade in another place. And so there's this sense of movement. Now, over the years, and this is not unique to Methodism, something that starts out as a movement becomes an institution, and the institution can suddenly start to take on a significance and an importance, which means that it's really hard to keep that sense of movement and dynamism. And, I love the Methodist Church. It owes me so much, but actually, in truth, we just need to recognize that we've become one of those institutions. That's not to say it's not doing good things, but that sense of movement and dynamism has withered a little bit. So my vision is that we can just reclaim the past and find, as we look back to our roots, what it was that gave the energy and the impetus for us to be transformational. Some people say that Methodism stopped us having a civil war in this country.
Wow.
And it was just so impactful because it just got to the heart of things and
Yeah.
changed how people saw the world.
Yeah.
Well, that would be amazing.
Yeah, it'd be really good, wouldn't it? So what lessons do you think modern Methodism can draw from historic Methodism? I mean,
Yeah,
in many senses, Methodism, was a renewal movement within the Anglican Church. So,
absolutely.
so what can modern Methodism learn from that?
I think that we, at one level, and I say all of this kindly about the church I love and that I get paid by. I think we need to
Very
relax.
important.
Just thought I'd get that in. We need to get to the point of taking ourselves less seriously as a church and thinking we need to be able to do everything, and actually to be able to see that we are. I think we're at our best when we are a movement where we're releasing lay folk to fulfill that fire that God is placing in their lives. And that will look like a whole range of different things. And I don't think it's for the centre to tell the circumference what they should be doing, for the centre to be telling this movement, oh, we'll do that and we'll do that, but we won't do that. But actually, if we've got confidence in God and God motivating people to be transformational, then actually we can end up with this amazing array of transformational things happening up and down the land in all sorts of different locations. That's
Yeah.
my vision, I think, and
Yeah.
so that we mobilize lay people and
Yeah.
we set them free and we encourage them and we enable them to be filled with God's grace, and then that grace spills out into our community.
Yeah. I think I probably said that once upon a time I was in the Methodist Church.
I know.
So I share your love of it, and also share a little bit of your frustration of it at times, because there were lots of things you couldn't do,
Yeah.
as a lay person. You
Yeah.
can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do the other, and sometimes that was a little bit restricting. So I love that you're coming to this with fresh energy, learning from the past. Can we renew again this amazing church? And what would one of your rural churches look like, do you think, if this happened? What would be your vision for one local church? Small church is never going to be a big church of hundreds of people. It might always be 20 or 30 or 40 people in a community.
Yeah.
What's your vision for them?
Well, I think if I can just draw a contrast between sometimes what is and what could be, and we do have exemplars of this sort of thing happening. The what is sometimes is that people feel that they need to protect that Sunday service at 10:30 in a particular style because that's what they inherited and that's what they feel. Perhaps that's what is expected of them, But it's become quite a deadening activity, or it's not full of life as one might hope, and it's not attractional to those beyond the church. But we have examples where churches have had the courage to see that's not working, but actually to say, for instance, and it's you might say, well, this is not a huge shift, but actually it's quite a dynamic shift. But they recognise that on a Wednesday morning, for example, when they have a coffee morning, loads of folk come, and there is life, and there's cake, and there's fun, and there's activity, and they recognise that at that point they're starting to engage with the community around them, and they're able to deal with some of the loneliness issues that are in the rural context. And then they hear that there's some real issue around around sofa surfing and rural homelessness, is a real thing. And
Yeah.
they start to liaise with agencies that can provide support. And lo and behold, they find that there's some property that they could be influential in transforming into being social housing, for instance. They might even give up their own building to create social housing in a rural community, because they don't actually need that building to do what they do well. They can do that in the village hall or the community.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? And so
Yeah.
suddenly there's this giving awayness that is coming from their sense of life, which
Mm.
is precious. They're still connected with God in just as deep a way, and one might argue a deeper way than they were on a Sunday at 10:30. But they're also now really embedded in the community in a way that is transformational. And there are examples where that's happening. And I think that's really, really exciting,
Yeah.
because it's passion for God, passion for the world, passion for each other, all coming together and being really dynamic.
Yeah. Sounds great. Sounds fantastic. So, Leslie, what's your highest hope for your book, Revised Again? Come on, what is it that you long for it to do?
I suppose I hope that it will stoke deeper conversation within the Methodist Church. That seems like quite a niche hope, doesn't it? But actually, that it will be a driver of a new freshness of thinking within the Methodist Church, that it will open up further debate, that it might challenge us to be able to think more creatively, and even to be able to say, well, yeah, we've been heading in that direction, but actually, this is a reminder that if we head in this direction, there could be a different future for us.
Mm.
And it could be a dynamic and a hopeful. I hope, in a sense, that it gives renewed confidence, because sometimes the Methodist people can get a little bit anxious and down at heel about things and feel like our best years are behind us, and really it's about managing decline. And I don't think that that's God's future for us at all. I think God has a really dynamic future for us.
Yeah.
And one American Methodist said that Methodism's best years are ahead of it. And I want to say amen to that, and I think it could be so.
Yeah. Well, Leslie, I can see why it might have been significant you gave up accountancy, because it looks like God has got a very important task for you to do within the Methodist Church, and it's really exciting. And I know there are lots of others like you
No,
who
there
have
are.
passion
There
for
are.
God's expression of His church through Methodism, and it's great to hear. And it's been really great to have you on the PublishU podcast today.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you all for listening to this podcast, where we're featuring the real life stories of authors from around the world. If you're interested yourself in becoming a published author, please check out our website, www.publishu.com. And if you've liked this broadcast, please subscribe and listen for more. We look forward to seeing you really soon. Goodbye for now.